What happens when a self-made billionaire life coach walks into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom expecting a slap on the wrist for a simple business dispute, only to discover that the elderly judge has uncovered a massive fraud operation that destroyed thousands of lives? Victoria Sterling, founder of the Empire Mind Academy, strutted into Providence Municipal Court like she owned the place, designer heels clicking against marble floors, a smirk plastered across her perfectly contoured face. But when Judge Caprio revealed what his team had discovered in the weeks leading up to this hearing, what happened next became one of the most explosive courtroom confrontations ever captured on camera. Before we show you the moment Victoria's empire came crashing down, less than 7% of you watching are actually subscribed. If you believe in justice for those who prey on desperate people, hit that subscribe button now. This story is going to spread everywhere, and you don't want to miss what happens when real accountability meets fake success. It's a cold Tuesday morning in Providence Municipal Court, and Judge Frank Caprio is reviewing case files at his bench, steam rising from his coffee cup in the quiet moments before the day's hearings begin. At 76 years old, Judge Caprio has presided over more than 30 years of cases in this very courtroom, seeing everything from parking tickets to life-altering criminal charges. But something about today's docket has left him unusually somber. He spent most of the previous evening reading witness statements, financial records, and heartbreaking testimonials that kept him awake long past midnight. The tribunal is packed this morning. Every seat is filled with people who've traveled from across the country, some holding photographs, others clutching folders thick with documents. News cameras line the back wall, their operators checking equipment with nervous energy. Court reporters whisper to each other about the unusual media presence. There's an energy in the air, a palpable sense that something significant is about to happen, something that will ripple far beyond these four walls. At exactly 9:15, the bailiff calls the court to order. The case of the people versus Victoria Mary Sterling, age 38, charged with multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Victoria Sterling enters the courtroom like a runway model at Fashion Week. She's wearing a cream-colored Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people in the room make in 3 months. Her honey, blonde hair styled in perfect waves that catch the fluorescent lights. Diamond studs glitter in her ears, and her Louboutin heels announce each confident step with a sharp click that echoes off the walls. And there's something else, something in the way she carries herself. A practiced smile that's been perfected through thousands of hours of video content, a performance of success that's become her entire identity. She doesn't walk to the defendant's table so much as glide, her head held high, her expression one of barely concealed amusement, as if this entire proceeding is beneath her, a minor inconvenience in her otherwise extraordinary life. Her attorney, a slick corporate lawyer in a $5,000 suit, follows close behind, leather briefcase in hand. Victoria takes her seat and immediately pulls out her phone, scrolling through what appears to be Instagram, occasionally smiling at the screen. She glances up at Judge Caprio with a look that suggests she's already calculating how to turn this into content, how to spin this courtroom appearance into another viral moment for her brand. Judge Caprio looks up from his papers, slowly removing his reading glasses in that deliberate way he has when something troubles him deeply, and studies the defendant before him. He's read everything about Victoria Sterling's empire, the webinars promising financial freedom, the $12,000 coaching programs, the exclusive masterminds costing $50,000 for 6 months of access, the luxury lifestyle flaunted across social media as proof of her methods, and most importantly, he's read the stories of those who believed her. Miss Sterling, Judge Caprio began, his voice measured but carrying an edge that makes Victoria finally look up from her phone. You stand accused of defrauding over 4,000 individuals across 42 states, totaling approximately $63 million in damages. How do you plead? Victoria Sterling's attorney immediately stands, smoothing his tie with practiced precision. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty to all charges. Miss Sterling is a legitimate businesswoman who has helped thousands of people transform their lives through proven personal development methodologies. These accusations are nothing more than attacks from individuals who failed to implement her teachings correctly and are now seeking someone to blame for their own shortcomings. Victoria nods, her expression shifting to one of wounded innocence, a look she's deployed countless times in response videos addressing what she calls haters and trolls. Your Honor, if I may, Victoria says, her voice dripping with the kind of inspirational tone she uses in her videos, every word carefully modulated for maximum impact. I've dedicated my entire life to empowering people. My programs have changed lives. I have testimonials from hundreds of satisfied clients who've achieved incredible results. This prosecution is a witch hunt against successful women in business. Judge Caprio leans back in his chair, studying her with those compassionate yet penetrating eyes that have seen through countless defendants over 3 decades. Miss Sterling, I've reviewed your marketing materials. You claim to be a self-made billionaire who went from sleeping in her car to owning a private jet in just 3 years. Is that accurate? Victoria's smile widens. Absolutely, Your Honor. I'm living proof that anyone can achieve financial freedom with the right mindset and strategies. That's exactly what I teach. I see, Judge Caprio says quietly, opening a folder on his bench. And these strategies you teach, they're based on your own success in what specific business? For the first time, Victoria hesitates, just a fraction of a second, but it's enough. I've built multiple 7-figure businesses, Your Honor. Real estate, e-commerce, digital marketing. I've mastered the art of wealth creation. According to the financial records subpoenaed by this court, Judge Caprio continues, his voice taking on a harder edge, 97% of your reported income comes from selling coaching programs and courses about making money. Your real estate portfolio consists of one heavily mortgaged condo in Miami. Your e-commerce business generated $4,000 in revenue last year. Your only successful business is teaching other people how to build successful businesses that don't actually exist. Would you say that's an accurate assessment? The courtroom stirs, murmurs ripple through the gallery. Victoria's attorney leans over to whisper urgently in her ear, but she waves him off, her composure cracking just slightly. Your Honor, the personal development industry is worth billions of dollars. Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, these are respected figures. I'm no different. No, Miss Sterling, you are very different, Judge Caprio says, his voice rising with controlled intensity. And I'm going to show this court exactly how different you are. Bailiff, please call our first witness. The bailiff calls out, Sarah Mitchell. A woman in her early 40s rises from the gallery, her hands trembling as she makes her way to the witness stand. She's wearing a simple Target dress, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dark circles under her eyes suggesting months of sleepless nights. She looks like someone who's been through a war and barely survived. After being sworn in, she takes her seat, her eyes fixed on Victoria with a mixture of anger and profound sadness. Judge Caprio's voice softens immediately. Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for being here today. I know this isn't easy. Can you tell the court how you became involved with Miss Sterling's Empire Mind Academy? Sarah takes a deep breath, her voice shaking but determined. 2 years ago, I was working as a nurse, single mom with 2 kids. I was drowning in student debt, barely making rent. I kept seeing Victoria's ads on Facebook, these videos of her in front of private jets and luxury cars, talking about how she transformed her life and how she could teach me to do the same. And what convinced you to purchase her program? Judge Caprio asked gently. She had this video, this free webinar that I watched one night after a 16-hour shift at the hospital. She talked about her own struggle, how she was once exactly where I was, broke and hopeless. She cried talking about sleeping in her car. She said she'd discovered a secret system that the wealthy elite didn't want regular people to know about. And at the end, she said her $12,000 coaching program was opening for enrollment, but only for 24 hours. She said if I was serious about changing my life, I had to act now. What happened next? Sarah's voice breaks. I maxed out 3 credit cards. $12,000 I didn't have. She promised that within 90 days, if I followed her system exactly, I'd make that money back and more. She guaranteed it. She said everyone in her program was seeing results, and if I didn't, it was only because I wasn't implementing correctly. And did you see results? No, Your Honor. The program was 8 pre-recorded videos, each about 45 minutes long, generic advice about mindset and manifestation, vision boards, affirmations, nothing about actual business skills or strategy. When I reached out to the support email asking for help, I got an automated response directing me to buy her advanced program for another $25,000 because clearly I needed the next level training. Judge Caprio leans forward. Mrs. Mitchell, what impact has this had on your life? Tears stream down Sarah's face. I'm bankrupt, Your Honor. I lost my car because I couldn't keep up with the payments. I had to move my kids out of our apartment and into my mother's basement. The debt collection calls never stop. But worse than all of that, I feel like such a fool. I trusted her. I believed her when she said she cared about helping people like me, and she just took my money and disappeared behind a wall of automated emails and support tickets that never got answered. Victoria stares straight ahead, her jaw tight, refusing to look at Sarah, but Judge Caprio notices her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms under the table. Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Caprio says softly. I know how difficult that was to share. You may step down." As Sarah returns to her seat, the judge looks directly at Victoria. "Miss Sterling, do you have anything to say to Mrs. Mitchell?" Victoria's attorney immediately objects, but Judge Caprio raises his hand. "I'm not asking for legal testimony, counselor. I'm asking if Miss Sterling has any human response to what she just heard." Victoria remains silent for a long moment, then speaks with that same polished tone. "Your Honor, I'm sorry Mrs. Mitchell didn't see results, but I can't be responsible for people who don't do the work. My program clearly states that results aren't guaranteed and depend on individual effort." "I see," Judge Caprio says, his voice cold. "Bailiff, next witness." Over the next 90 minutes, 5 more people take the stand. Michael Torres, a retired veteran who invested his disability payments and life savings totaling $37,000 into Victoria's programs, only to end up homeless. Jennifer Wu, a college student who took out private loans to join Victoria's young millionaire mastermind, now drowning in debt with no degree because she dropped out to focus on building her empire as Victoria encouraged. Marcus Johnson, a laid-off factory worker who was promised Victoria's system worked even without startup capital, who maxed out every credit card and borrowed from family, losing everything including his marriage. Each story more devastating than the last. Each person sitting in that witness stand representing thousands of others who couldn't make the trip to Providence, but whose written testimonials Judge Caprio had read late into the night. With each testimony, Victoria's composure deteriorates slightly. The perfect posture slumps. The confident smile fades. The phone stays in her purse. But she never apologizes, never shows genuine remorse. Only that same deflection, blaming victims for not trying hard enough, not believing hard enough, not wanting success badly enough. Guys, before I tell you what Judge Caprio does next, I need you to do something. In the comments below, tell me where you're watching from, and if you've ever been targeted by these kinds of scams. Because this story is about more than one fraudster. It's about an entire industry that preys on desperate people with false promises of easy wealth. Your stories matter, and they need to be heard. Judge Caprio slowly stands from his bench, something he rarely does in the middle of testimony, and everyone in the courtroom immediately understands that something significant is about to happen. At 76 years old, he's not a tall man, but when he rises to his full height with decades of judicial authority radiating from every fiber of his being, he commands absolute attention. The entire courtroom falls silent. Even the court reporters pause their typing. Victoria Sterling looks up at him, and for the first time, genuine fear flickers across her face. "Miss Sterling," Judge Caprio begins, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room with devastating clarity. "I want you to stand up." Her attorney immediately objects. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular." "Counselor, sit down," Judge Caprio says without breaking eye contact with Victoria. "Miss Sterling, stand up." Victoria slowly rises, her legs visibly shaking, the performance of confidence finally crumbling under the weight of real accountability. Judge Caprio removes his glasses, that gesture that everyone who knows him understands signals something important is coming. "I've been sitting on this bench for over 30 years. In that time, I've seen thousands of people come through these doors. I've seen good people who made mistakes. I've seen desperate people who made bad choices. I've seen people struggling with addiction, poverty, mental illness, circumstances beyond their control. And you know what the difference is between them and you?" He pauses, letting the question hang in the air. "They felt shame. They felt remorse. They understood the impact of their actions on other human beings. But you, Miss Sterling, you sit in my courtroom and you feel nothing but inconvenience." "Your Honor, Victoria starts, but Judge Caprio raises his hand. "I'm not finished. I've reviewed every piece of evidence in this case. Your marketing emails designed by psychologists to trigger fear and urgency. Your fake testimonials from paid actors. Your photoshopped images of luxury lifestyles you don't actually live. Your deliberately vague refund policy buried in legal jargon specifically designed to prevent people from getting their money back. Your LC structure set up to shield your personal assets. Every detail of your operation was carefully crafted not to help people, but to extract maximum money from those least able to afford it." He steps down from his bench and walks toward the defendant's table, something he almost never does, his eyes never leaving Victoria's face. "You targeted single mothers working 2 jobs. You targeted veterans with PTSD looking for purpose. You targeted young people drowning in student debt desperate for a way out. You studied human psychology not to heal but to exploit. You built an empire not on value but on false hope. And when people came to you saying your system didn't work, you didn't help them. You blamed them. You shamed them. You told them their failure was proof they weren't good enough, and if they just bought your next program, your next course, your next mastermind, then maybe Maybe they could achieve what you pretended to have achieved. What nobody in that courtroom knew yet was that Judge Caprio's investigative team, working with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, had been building this case for 7 months. They'd uncovered bank records showing Victoria's real net worth was less than $400,000, most of it in luxury goods she'd purchased on credit. They'd found the rental agreements for the private jets and Lamborghinis she posed with for Instagram. They'd interviewed the videographers who staged her office scenes in rented executive suites. They'd traced the IP addresses of glowing testimonials back to computers in her own home. They'd documented everything, every lie, every manipulation, every calculated deception. Judge Caprio returned to his bench, but he remained standing, his presence towering over the proceedings. Miss Sterling, you asked me earlier why you're different from respected figures in personal development. Let me tell you exactly why. Tony Robbins built his career on strategies he developed and tested over decades. Brendan Burchard has legitimate credentials and demonstrable results. They may charge premium prices, but they deliver substantial value. You, on the other hand, are selling nothing but your own image of success, an image that's completely fabricated. You're not a teacher. You're not a coach. You're a con artist with an Instagram account and a compelling sales funnel. Victoria's face has gone pale. Tears stream down her cheeks now, but they look different from the polished, camera-ready tears she's deployed in countless videos. These tears are real, born not from remorse but from the dawning realization that her carefully constructed reality is collapsing in real time. Your Honor, please, she whispers. I never meant to hurt anyone. I genuinely believed I was helping people. I thought if they just believed in themselves like I taught them. Stop, Judge Caprio says, his voice sharp as a blade. Don't you dare stand in my courtroom and pretend this was about belief. This was about greed, pure calculated greed. You saw vulnerable people as ATM machines. You saw human suffering as a business opportunity. And the worst part, the truly despicable part, is that you wrapped it all in the language of empowerment and self-love and taking responsibility. You took the very concepts that could actually help people, and you weaponized them to blame your victims for their own exploitation. He picks up a thick file from his bench. I have here sworn affidavits from 3,247 people who purchased your programs. The average amount spent was $17,000. Some people spent over $100,000 trying to make your system work, going deeper and deeper into debt, because you convinced them the problem was never your teaching, but always their implementation. Do you understand what you've done? Do you comprehend the scope of the devastation you've caused? Victoria is openly sobbing now, her carefully maintained facade completely shattered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. It just got so big so fast, and I didn't know how to stop it. The money kept coming in, and everyone expected me to be this person, this success story, and I couldn't let them down. You couldn't let them down. Judge Caprio's voice rises with controlled fury. Miss Sterling, you didn't just let them down. You destroyed them. Sarah Mitchell's children had to change schools because she can't afford to live in their district anymore. Michael Torres slept in a veteran's shelter last winter because of you. Jennifer Wu's parents, immigrants who worked their entire lives to give their daughter opportunities, are now working into their 70s to pay off the debt she accumulated following your advice. These aren't abstract consequences. These are real human beings whose lives you've irreparably damaged. The courtroom is absolutely silent except for the sound of Victoria's crying. Even her high-powered attorney sits frozen, understanding that no legal maneuvering can save his client from this moment of moral reckoning. Judge Caprio sits back down, suddenly looking every one of his 76 years, tired from carrying the weight of so much human suffering in this case. Miss Sterling, I want to be very clear about something. You came into my courtroom today expecting what? A fine community service? A settlement where you promised to stop but admit no wrongdoing? That's not what's going to happen here. Not today. Not ever. He opens the sentencing guidelines in front of him. The charges against you carry a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison per count. The prosecution has recommended 15 years given the scope of the fraud and the number of victims. Your attorney has requested 5 years with possibility of parole after 2, arguing that you're a first-time offender who made mistakes but meant well. Judge Caprio removes his glasses again, rubbing his eyes. I've thought long and hard about what justice looks like in this case, because that's what I'm here for, not revenge, not punishment for punishment's sake, but justice, real justice that serves multiple purposes. It must protect society from you continuing these actions. It must serve as a deterrent to others who might follow your path. It must provide some measure of accountability to your victims. And ideally, though I'm not optimistic about this part, It must provide you an opportunity for genuine rehabilitation and remorse. He looks directly at Victoria Marie Sterling, on the charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. This court finds you guilty on all counts. I hereby sentence you to 12 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for the first 6 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all documented victims, totaling $63 million, plus court costs and punitive damages of an additional $20 million. All of your business assets, personal assets, and any income streams related to your coaching empire are hereby frozen and will be liquidated to compensate your victims. The gasps throughout the courtroom are audible. Victoria's legs give out, and she collapses into her chair, her attorney catching her shoulder. Furthermore, Judge Caprio continues, you are permanently banned from operating any business in the personal development, coaching, or educational space. You are prohibited from creating content on social media platforms for commercial purposes. Upon your release, you will be subject to ongoing financial monitoring to ensure compliance with restitution requirements. You will be required to participate in a restorative justice program where you will meet face to face with your victims and hear the full impact of your actions without the buffer of attorneys or prepared statements. Judge Caprio stands one final time, looking out at the gallery filled with Victoria's victims. To everyone in this courtroom who was hurt by Miss Sterling's actions, I want you to hear me clearly. What happened to you is not your fault. You did not fail because you lacked belief or discipline or work ethic. You were deliberately, systematically defrauded by someone who studied exactly how to exploit your hopes and fears. You are not weak for falling for her lies. You are human beings who wanted to believe in a better future for yourselves and your families. That's not a character flaw. That's called hope. And she took that hope and she monetized it. His voice grows stronger, filling the room with conviction. But I also want to tell you something else. This verdict doesn't erase your pain or restore your money immediately. The restitution process will take years, and you may never recover everything you lost. What this verdict does is validate your experience. It says you were heard. It says what happened to you mattered. It says that in a system that too often lets white-collar criminals walk away with fines they can afford sometimes, just sometimes, there is accountability. He turns back to Victoria, who sits hunched over the table, her $1 million suit rumpled, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, the image of success completely obliterated. Miss Sterling, I hope that during your time in prison, away from social media, away from the performance, away from the constant need to maintain an image of success, you find something you've clearly never had: genuine self-reflection. I hope you come to understand that real success isn't measured in Instagram followers or luxury cars or manufactured testimonials. Real success is measured in the value you add to the world, the lives you improve, the truth you tell. You had a platform, you had influence, you could have done something meaningful. Instead, you chose exploitation. That is your legacy now. Not the empire you built, but the lives you destroyed building it. He brings down his gavel with a finality that echoes through the silent courtroom. This court is adjourned. Bailiff, please remand Miss Sterling into custody. As Victoria is led away in handcuffs, her last glimpse of freedom is the faces of her victims in the gallery. Some are crying with relief. Some are stone-faced, still processing. But all of them are finally being heard. Sarah Mitchell watches Victoria disappear through the courthouse doors and feels something she hasn't felt in 2 years: validation. Not closure, exactly, not complete healing, but the beginning of it, the acknowledgement that she wasn't crazy, wasn't stupid, wasn't weak, she was wronged. And sometimes, in a world that often feels devoid of justice, that acknowledgement is everything. 18 months later, Sarah Mitchell walks into a community center in her hometown, nervous energy coursing through her body. She's been asked to speak at an event about financial fraud awareness, sharing her story to help others recognize the warning signs of coaching scams. She hasn't spoken publicly about her experience since the trial, but Judge Caprio's words have stayed with her. Your experience matters. Your story needs to be heard. As she takes the podium and looks out at the audience, 50 people who've all been victims of similar schemes, she takes a deep breath and begins. My name is Sarah, and 2 years ago, I lost everything to a coaching scam. And I'm here to tell you that it wasn't your fault either. The room erupts in quiet tears and supportive applause. After her talk, 3 women approach her, sharing their own stories, asking how she found the strength to testify, how she's rebuilding. Sarah realizes that Judge Caprio was right about something else too. This is what real success looks like. Not private jets and designer clothes, but standing in front of people who are hurting and saying, I see you. I was you. And we're going to get through this together. Michael Torres, the homeless veteran, used his restitution payment to secure a small apartment and enroll in a legitimate trade school for HVAC repair. He graduates in 3 months. Jennifer Wu returned to college, changed her major to consumer protection law, and has already started interning with the Federal Trade Commission's division investigating online fraud. The testimonial she documented from Victoria's victims became part of a larger database used to identify and prosecute similar schemes. As for Victoria Sterling, she sits in her cell at the Federal Correctional Facility in Danbury, Connecticut, her world reduced from private jets and 5-star hotels to an 8-by-10 room in a metal bunk. Her Instagram account, once boasting 2 million followers, has been permanently deleted. Her website displays a court-ordered notice warning visitors about the fraud conviction and directing victims to the restitution fund. In her mandatory therapy sessions, she's slowly, painfully beginning to confront what she became. Not the person she pretended to be in videos, but the person she actually was behind the camera. A woman so addicted to the performance of success that she lost any sense of ethical boundaries. A woman who convinced herself that if people believed her lies, then somehow that made them true. It's uncomfortable work, it's humiliating, and it's the first honest thing she's done in years. Judge Frank Caprio's handling of this case sent shockwaves through the personal development industry. Within 6 months of the verdict, 3 major coaching platforms implemented stricter verification requirements for course creators. The Federal Trade Commission launched a task force specifically targeting false income claims in marketing, and dozens of copycat schemes quietly shut down, their operators suddenly aware that the legal consequences could be real. But perhaps more importantly, Victoria Sterling's conviction changed the conversation around personal responsibility in self-help culture. The toxic narrative that failure is always a personal character flaw, that poverty is just a mindset problem, that if you're not succeeding it's because you're not trying hard enough, began to be questioned more critically. People started asking uncomfortable questions. Who benefits from this message? What systems of exploitation does this rhetoric enable? If this story has restored your faith that justice is still possible, that people who prey on the vulnerable can be held accountable, that one judge willing to dig deep and see the human cost of white-collar crime can make a difference, then hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories where real accountability meets artificial success. And remember the words Judge Frank Caprio spoke directly to Victoria Sterling's victims that day in Providence. Your hope was not foolish. Your trust was not weakness. You deserved better than what you got. And this verdict says exactly that. Justice is not just about punishment. It's about validation. It's about saying loud and clear that what happened to you mattered, that your pain was real, that you were heard. And sometimes, in a world that can feel cruel and indifferent, that changes everything.